Where is the big PS5 showcase? Here's how you can get the new DualSense before scalpers buy them all. You're definitely going to want a PSVR2 after watching this video. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady, the channel all about PlayStation. Today we have some really cool PlayStation news to get into, but before we do, if you need any PlayStation accessories like a new DualSense, a monitor, maybe even a new PS5, check out the links down in the description. It would really help me out if you bought anything you need through those, because I get a little bit of a kickback. There's an account on Twitter called The Real Insider. They go by The Insider. That's all that's known about them, but they've correctly leaked stuff in the past before, like the exact names of new Assassin's Creed games. So they have some good credibility in the field of leaking PlayStation news, and they're saying that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, Sony's next big AAA IP is going to be revealed. Now, this is exciting to me, obviously, because the new internal IP from Sony is exactly what I feel like we've been waiting for. They have some new stuff like Ghost of Tsushima. That was a big new IP that we had at the end of last generation. We're probably going to get a sequel there. They, of course, also have Death Stranding, which I'm assuming we'll have a sequel for, but it's been a little while since we've had anything like big and genuinely new out of Sony, and I like a lot of their games. Like, I would say 95% of the games they release. I think it's worth getting excited for a new IP from Sony. The interesting thing is this could come from any of the studios, because as we heard last year, Sony switched basically all of its biggest studios to a 2-game structure. So all of them, from Naughty Dog to Insomniac, all the way down to Bend Studio, they're all apparently working on 2 games at once simultaneously, so Sony can release games faster, because as the generations have gone on, the gaps between games, like sequels, has gotten much longer with every single game. Like, a great example of this is that during the PS3 generation, we got Uncharted, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, and The Last of Us from Naughty Dog, but in the PS4 generation, all we got was Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us Part 2. The same thing goes for Insomniac. They released a ton of games during the PS3 generation, but even they had to slow it down a little bit during the PS4 generation. So that's why Sony's countering this by having all their studios work on 2 games. What I'd really like to see is a competitive shooter. I'm pretty sure that's what's being worked on over at Guerrilla. A lot of people thought it would be a new Killzone game, but I'm kind of doubting that. When I was a kid, there was this franchise that was always getting commercials called SOCOM. It was like Sony's third-person competitor to all the other shooters out there, and I thought it was pretty good on PSP. I used to play it all the time. I never really got into the console games. It was made by Zipper. I'd like to see a revival of that, knowing that Call of Duty might become exclusive to Xbox within the next 5 years. So yeah, hopefully this rumor is true. The reason I wanted to talk about it is because if we're hearing about a reveal that's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, well, just wait till the end of the video. We'll talk about it more. This video is sponsored by Magic Spoon. Magic Spoon is cereal reinvented, and their variety pack comes with 4 awesome flavors between cocoa, frosted, fruity, and peanut butter. Magic Spoon cereals have 0 grams of sugar, 4 to 5 grams of net carbs, and 13 to 14 grams of protein per serving. And each serving only has 140 calories. They're also soy-free, gluten-free, grain-free, keto-friendly, and low carb. Look, I've been noticing all the comments from you guys lately asking if I lost weight, and that's mainly because I changed my diet. One thing I had to cut was all the Halloween cereals I used to get as a kid, and Magic Spoon came in like a champ as a great replacement. They're all pretty good, but my favorite is definitely the peanut butter flavor. If you want to try it for yourself, pick up a variety pack down at the link in the description and use the code PSReady at checkout for $5 off your order, or you can go to magicspoon.com/PSReady. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Thanks again to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video. So with the PSVR2 launching next year, Sony has finally started showing it off to journalists, and all of the reactions to this thing have been extremely positive. I was kind of expecting it to be positive just hearing about the actual tech that's in this thing. It's basically like a mix of the Valve Index and the Oculus Quest 2. You're pretty much getting the best of both worlds there, other than the Valve Knuckle controllers being like the best VR controllers, and the Sense controllers kind of bridging the gap between the Oculus Touch controllers, but not quite getting there. Either way, I thought this thing was going to get positive reactions, but it basically depended on what games were being shown off, and surprisingly, Sony showed off some cool stuff. They let people play Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is a game where they first showed it off. I wasn't super excited for it because it looked like another on-rails thing, but then the second time we saw it, it had actual combat and dodging, and it's a cool first-person take on Horizon. You're apparently going to play as a Karja soldier, which seems cool, and the game is going to take 6 or 7 hours to complete, which seems great. Like, VR games are notoriously short, short for how much money they cost. I think that's a big reason why with the PSVR 1 no one really adopted it, because the games were kind of expensive for how little actual playtime there was. But games are getting longer and longer. Like on the Oculus Quest 2, you can play the entire thing of Resident Evil 4 in VR, and that is like a 12 to 13 hour game. So seeing it be 6 or 7 hours, it's pretty good for a story driven game. Hopefully they have some sort of like horde mode or something like that that'll get more longevity out of it, because I got a good feeling Horizon's going to be a full price game. Resident Evil Village was also shown off and people really like that. Resident Evil 7 was honestly the first time I ever used a VR headset, and it made me motion sick because I didn't like how A, it had a screen door effect on the PSVR 1, and B, you had to like sit still and move with the controller, which made me really sweaty and like disoriented my head and made me want to throw up. It looks like this is more where you can stand up and use the Sense controllers and aim with them. And now that I've played crazy games like Boneworks, I'm excited to check out Resident Evil Village. I hope Resident Evil 7 gets some sort of patch when the PSVR 2 comes out so that it will control better with the PSVR 2, or at least even interface with the PSVR 2, so you don't have to sit and use the DualShock 4 to play that game, because that's what kind of ruined the VR aspect of it for me. I'd love to play it in VR though, because there's some crazy moments in Resident Evil 7. They also showed off Tales from Galaxy's Edge VR. I really like this game. I thought it was cool when they re-released it and made it better on the Oculus Quest 2. It was pretty rough when it came out with just being light on content. I'm not too excited to check that out again just because I already played it, but they also showed off The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2, which looks really cool. That's one of my favorite VR games, the first Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. The melee combat in it, even though you're playing in sort of like a comic book art style, the melee combat in that game is absolutely brutal, and I cannot wait to see it in the OLED screen of the PSVR 2 with no screen door effect and that inside out tracking. Oh, it's going to be great. So yeah, this article got me super excited for the PSVR 2, and it should get you more excited as well, because this time with this headset, they're launching with some really, really cool games. You're getting a first-party Sony game, a Horizon game, which is cool. That's one of their biggest franchises. You're getting Resident Evil Village, which is one of the coolest games that's been released in the past few years. I absolutely love that game. If they can launch with Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Part 2, that's fine, but I feel like they got a little bit of time before they need to release that, knowing that Resident Evil Village will probably be there at launch. And then there's all that tertiary stuff like Demio, and I know people are excited for the new Firewall game. So I don't know, I feel like this could be when the PSVR 2 actually lands and takes off with people, whereas the PSVR 1 struggled to find its footing a little bit. So now that the state of play is done and over with, I kind of slept on it, and I would give it like a C+, B- sort of range. There was some cool stuff there, like obviously Tekken is a huge franchise. Pacific Drive, for me, a horror game that's like a roguelite where you're on a road trip and you got to outfit your car. It seems really cool. I'm excited to check that out. Of course, that God of War trailer was just absolutely incredible. Like, I needed something to kick in my hype on that game. Like, we know it's coming. A lot of people still think it was going to get delayed. I don't think so anymore, knowing that they're going to release a controller. They put out that awesome trailer. That trailer really sold me on this game. Like, seeing the new gameplay was fine. It looks like God of War, but just like God of War Plus. They've added in new animations, new abilities, stuff like that. But when Atreus shoots the arrow and the wolf follows it through the air and like the sky cuts in half, that was just breathtaking. It was so cool. And like the giant jellyfish, just all the different environments in this trailer really, really impressed me. And that thunder crash when the axe hits Thor's hammer Mjolnir, like, I don't know, man. I just think this game is going to be very cool. Other than those few games though, like nothing really blew me away. There was a lot more Japanese games that I was expecting, like Silent Hill, Resident Evil 4 Remake, finally whatever we're getting in the Bloodborne world. So yeah, my expectations kind of ruined it a little bit for me, but overall I think it was a solid presentation. The only thing that I think is holding it back is this showcase, because I am still a firm believer that we are going to have a PlayStation showcase by the end of September. They held stuff back from the Disney showcase. They also kind of held back a little bit on the state of play. And now there's this whole rumor that we're going to see their next IP revealed in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Like, if Sony's revealing a new IP, they want to do it in a big way, not with like a blog post, how they talked about when they bought Haven Studios or something like that. That seems like something you would show off at a showcase. And there's still a few weeks left in September. They've always done them in September. I feel like that's when we can kind of expect it to happen. And there are so many games they need to show off here, on top of the new ones we don't even know about. Again, I mentioned Resident Evil 4 Remake, that needs to be shown off. Callisto Protocol has been shown off a lot of Jeff Keighley stuff, so I think they can skip that. It would be a great place to show off the Dead Space remake for sure. Final Fantasy 16, I want to see more of that. Knowing that Spider-Man 2 is coming out next year, I'd love to see some actual gameplay from that. The list goes on and on of games we know about that we're waiting to be shown more of, but Sony's got a lot of stuff in their pocket that they just need to tell us about, because seeing how much easier it's gotten to get a PS5, seeing it out in the wild more, I've actually seen one at a store, and just hearing from my friends who haven't felt the need to buy one yet, who want to buy one in 2023, and hearing the same thing about my friends' friends. Like, I was just talking to my friend Brady before I was recording this, and he's telling me that his friends who don't have a PS5 yet are really looking into it for 2023. Just knowing also that they're getting rid of the PS4 and moving on to the PS5, 2023 seems like it's going to be the year of the PS5. So having a huge showcase to really show people why they need to get a PS5 before next year, it seems like a no-brainer move on Sony's part, especially considering Microsoft has no big releases for the rest of the year. So if we don't end up getting this showcase in September, I'm just going to say the absolute latest I think we'll get it is October. I think that's when you're getting into the holiday territory. Call of Duty is releasing in October this year, so I'm sure they'll want to do whatever showcase they can before that even comes out. Either way, I'm excited. I think it's going to be cool, and I think it's going to happen sooner than we think. Next up, I want to shout out Crisis Core Reunion. This was one of my favorite PSP games growing up. I didn't play Final Fantasy VII. I only played Crisis Core, but I loved it. I used to play it all the time, and I was so bummed that it never came to the digital store on the Vita, mainly because of some weird music licensing. So the fact that they're remastering it and making it canon to the remake's timeline, I think that's going to be really cool, and we are getting it officially in December this year. It's launching on December 13th, and with how many times the remake has been given away for free, I feel like most of you probably have it in your account. So knowing that it's a 50 or 60 hour game, I feel like the clock is running down a little bit to start and finish it if you haven't played it yet. I've been playing through it on my Steam Deck. Having it portably is bringing me back to when I actually played Crisis Core on my PSP when I was a kid, which is awesome. I just wanted to give this game a shout out because if it's anything like it was when I played it when I was younger, this game is going to be really cool, and it fits into the Final Fantasy VII universe like perfectly. Next up, let's talk about this awesome new God of War controller. My DualSense, I have a black one. I love it. It matches my black PS5. I am 100% picking up that God of War DualSense. That looked really good. I like the wolves on it. I like that two-tone color scheme. I might take off the little black plastic from my white launch DualSense and pop it on because I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of two-tone with white, but overall I think it looks really good. Now, as far as getting one of these controllers goes, I'm assuming just based on the past it'll be pretty easy to get. I was able to get like every special edition DualShock 4 I ever wanted. This is going up for pre-order though on September 27th, and you'll have it in your hands on November 9th. And I'll have it linked down in the description on pretty much every future video going forward, so as soon as it goes live, you'll be able to grab one. I like how during events lately, Sony's been announcing hardware like the DualSense Edge at Jeff Keighley's last thing. Of course, the PSVR2 showed up at one of these. Good representation, speaking of PSVR2. Less excited about Tales from Galaxy's Edge because I've already played it. I've also already played Demio, but that game has gotten better since I last played it. So I'm like super excited to play that on PSVR2 day one. If we are not getting a showcase this year, I'm pretty disappointed. Not seeing stuff like Silent Hill 2, still having the Bloodborne patch or remake or whatever it is be missing in action really sucks. Final Fantasy 16, I wanted some hype moments for that game. At least the Winter's expansion, some more looks at that, and the third person mode for Resident Evil Village would have been nice. Of course, I was looking forward to some Resident Evil 4. The one silver lining upside here I can think of is that they're just holding back all the big announcements for whatever this showcase is. I really hope, I got my fingers crossed, that we do see a showcase by the end of the month. But yeah, this is more evidence in my mind that they're getting the smaller stuff out of the way so they can do a huge showcase by the end of September. Fingers crossed. If you want to know more about that, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I will have an unboxing video or at least an impressions video on that DualSense as soon as I get my hands on it because it looks awesome.